most of this discussion. If there is more discussion on the main motion, that's what I would be looking for now. Repeat the motion. So the main motion was adding Article 20, so that was the fourth amendment about binding arbitration. Kevin, go ahead and speak. You're speaking in favor of the motion today.
Kevin McElder, 625. So I just wanted to go back, I don't know, half an hour to when it was mentioned that the arbitration was against state law. I'm just looking really quickly, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm looking at RCW 7.04a, the Uniform Arbitration Act. And from what I can tell, what the section, or Article 20 amendment that was put forward is completely legal under this section of the RCWs. Read a short section here. Validity of an agreement to arbitrate. Any agreement contained in a record to submit to arbitration any existing or subsequent controversy arising between the parties to the agreement is valid, enforceable, and irrevocable, except upon a ground that exists at law or in equity for the revocation. So, from what I can tell, the statement before that this was the arbitration is against state law is incorrect.
I would like to address that since it was my statement, please.
Pardon?
Mr. Chair.
You.
He's addressing my statement of the illegality of
Okay.
this. If he reads on, under 7.04.060, Clause 2, the very next clause, says the court shall decide whether an agreement to arbitrate exists or controversy is subject to an agreement to arbitrate. I'm in court. 3 says an arbitrator shall decide whether a condition precedent to arbitrarily has been fulfilled and whether a contract containing a valid agreement to arbitrate is even enforceable. And 4 goes on to say, you'll go see a judge.
So I think debates, we've pretty much run down. Everybody's had an opportunity to speak. Christian, would you like to give closing?
It's legal to go see a judge, that's all it says.
Okay, thank you. In closing, what I'd like to say about this is that the letter that Clyde read, the letter that the member read from the state did not specifically object to the arbitration or to the official chartering organizations. It did address some other things. I believe the global statement at the end was regarding the objections that they had raised, not the objections that they had not raised. And so while it seems to me to be clear from the nature of the body that we will probably not be addressing all of these issues today, my hope would be that we will adopt the arbitration, and if a member so chooses to not submit to arbitration, I think between the prior 2 members' testimony, we realize that there's a process to go through, but that this is a reasonable thing, and whether or not it's a legal binding arbitration in our contract is left up to the courts. Do I have more than 1 minute in closing remarks or not? Okay.
Without objection, if you...
I think that if Carolyn's, if the member who read from the RCW is correct, then it's saying that if the parties that are supposed to go by arbitration disagree, then they go to a court and the judge decides whether or not the arbitration contract is acceptable or not. It's just a process that you go through. It's not being held over the volcano and being pushed into the lava. So I think that this is reasonable and that it avoids other controversial matters, and I hope that you will pass it because we're going into a caucus and convention process that I think it will be beneficial to have this in our bylaws. Thank you for the time.
All right, so I think we'll try a voice vote. So,
Division. We're going to get there anyway.
all right, let's try a voice vote. Unless you guys want to appeal my ruling. So, So the motion is, I don't know how to summarize the motion. It's this section on arbitration, amendment 4. This is a bylaw amendment, pardon? Creating new Article 20. So, and regarding arbitration. This is a bylaw amendment, so it requires 2/3 vote. So, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Okay, I can't do that. Okay, so all those in favor stand. Okay, be seated. So all those opposed, stand. You can be seated.
Katie Spade, is that is that a long campaign? Just gardening.
The motion fails. The vote was 37 to 29, and it would take 43 to pass with a 2/3 majority. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we vote the other 4 items at this time.
Second.
I object to the consideration of the motion because it would do harm for the motion to be discussed, because it violates our purpose in Article 2, Section 1 for all Republicans to participate, and the Washington State Republican Party Caucus and Convention rules, which define a Republican as anyone who considers themselves a Republican.
Who was that?
That was Lisa
Lisa
Ross.
Ross.
There's no motion on the floor to make that objection to, and there's other items on the agenda that have nothing to do with that question, so I'm not sure what a global dismissal. I think if she wants to not consider it, there should be a motion to not consider it.
I think that was her motion to Clyde's, I thought her motion was to Clyde's motion to not consider Clyde's motion.
Well, it's not, there's no motion on the floor now.
Yeah, there is.
There is a motion on the floor. Clyde just made a motion.
And it was seconded by me.
Yeah, okay.
What was the motion?
Clyde made a motion to consider the other 4 amendments together right now.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay. And so the motion to not consider comes before any debate, needs to be called before any debate. And does it require a second?
No.
Does it require a second? Okay.
Rising to the objection does not
So,
require.
so is there must be debate or no? There's no debate. Okay, so the motion is to not consider Clyde's motion. And is that,
No.
and Clyde's motion was to discuss the other 4
As a
Point of order,
amendments.
was the member's motion to consider all 4 of these, was it seconded prior to the ladies?
Yes.
Yeah,
So
Yes.
isn't a motion to not consider out of order when it's been seconded?
I don't think so. I think it's before debate, but not
Before
after
debate,
the
okay,
second.
thank you.
Okay.
It takes 2/3 vote.
Okay, so this is similar to appealing the ruling of the chair in that if you vote yes, your yes vote would be to consider Clyde's motion, and a no vote would be to not consider the motion. Am I got that
I
right?
think you have that back, please.
So Clyde's motion was to consider the four, to debate the four remaining amendments that were part of the five, as just to debate them right now. And Lisa, her motion was to, let's not debate that, let's not hear that debate. And so that is that takes precedence, and the only time you can make that motion is when the motion has been made and seconded, but no debate has occurred yet, and so that's the proper time to do it. So it is the proper motion to make if you want to say, I don't want to consider this motion. It does take 2/3 vote, so it would take a third of people to say, yes, let's debate these four items, or 2/3 to end the debate. So is that clear, James?
Mr. Chairman, so with the maker's original motion, was the motion to simply consider them, or was the motion to have them not pass?
The motion was to consider the remaining four amendments, as I
As
understand
what?
it.
As
As one.
what?
Right, consider them as one. Right, so we would be debating all four of the amendments, that would all be on the table. So anyways, no debate, so I'm going to call for the vote. So all those in favor of debating the motion as it was made by Clyde to, so if you're in favor of carrying debate on his motion, thank you, Ms. Sergeant at Arms. Might as well stand because it's the 2/3. So if you're in favor of
Hold on.
hearing the
You're
debate,
saying in favor of twice here.
okay, right, if
Keep
you're,
it clear.
right, if you're in favor of hearing debate on the motion as it was presented, all four of them together, if you're interested in considering that motion, then please stand.
The alternative is what? Yeah, what's
The alternative is that we won't hear his amendment, we won't consider his motion.
And then we start over.
Okay.
Right. So, if you want to consider these four
As one.
as one, to discuss these.
Please
then
rise.
rise. And go ahead.
And that's not gonna happen. We're gonna hear Clyde's motion, all four.
You can be seated. Okay, all those in favor of, or all those opposed to hearing of considering his motion, which was to consider the four amendments as one. If you're opposed to that, then stand. You can be seated. So anyway, the objection to hearing consideration fails. So the motion is on the floor, and Clyde, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Christian, for, the work toward trying to make things better. But today, given all of the information we have and the extreme lack of transparency and the concerns regarding illegality, I think it's much better for us to table these. And if they can be brought back in a place where there are researched and given appropriate consideration, you hear them at that time. But now, given the letter from the state party and the concerns we are, I feel like we should vote these and not have them heard individually. So.
Move to consider separate, Mr. Chairman.
So it's been moved and seconded to, that would be to split these 4 up into individually.
I believe that doesn't require a second or a vote.
Actually, we just voted whether to hear, to allow his motion to come forward or not. So you're moving to consider to divide it up into 4.
Out of order, the Latin term for it, but if you look in Robert's rules, if there's any big, long motion, one member can rise and ask for it to be considered separately, and I believe it's a done deal without a vote.
Who's the parliamentarian?
Excuse me, the motion was to take separate issues
No.
and lump them together.
Right.
And now he's trying to say that we have to re-separate them apart.
There was no motion to have separate issues.
Yeah.
The
They
motion,
were already separate issues.
they weren't brought before the body yet.
Actually, they were.
They were on the agenda, but they weren't in order for your point to stand for separate motions to be brought together.
Okay, it appears that Christian's motion is correct, that there's no debate, no second, and I can read it off to you, but anyway, it's pretty clear. So if we're going to consider them individually, then how do we divide them up?
Okay, so in the interest of time and obvious nature of the question, now we have decided that we are going to consider all of these items separately. What I would like to do is move to postpone proposed amendment 1 and proposed amendment 5 indefinitely.
A second. Stoops, 571.
Is there any objections?
So are we postponing?
Indefinitely.
Postponing indefinitely proposed amendments 1 and 5.
Yes.
Regarding membership and regarding
Okay.
unwelcome organizations. Second.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to postpone 1 and 5 indefinitely. And so you want to speak on that motion? So, does anybody want to discuss? Does anybody have any for or against on postponing 1 and 5?
I would like to vote against it, or to propose that we vote against it.
So you want to come up here, it sounds like you're going to make testimony opposing it?
As stated in the letter from the state of party attorneys, and according to my information, which I researched, Both Amendment 1 and Amendment 5 are completely unlawful. The fact that we would even postpone them to consider in the future seems absolutely absurd. We're going to waste our time. I recommend we move forward.
I appreciate your guys' patience and great behavior. So does there anybody else want to speak on postponing? Go ahead, Sean.
We don't know if these things are lawful or unlawful. We have the opinion of one lawyer who was retained by one member of our group here. I know that some people think that we're trying to railroad something through. We're trying to get something done, pull the wool over somebody's eyes, maybe exclude somebody for reasons that we just don't like you or whatever. The fact is, we're trying to make this body better. Indefinite postponement means we may never come back to this. We may have another amendment that is similar but more well worded, more within the RCWs. We're about trying to make this a better organization. I'm not saying that I would necessarily support these amendments. I'm saying they need to go back to the drawing board and be worked on a little bit more so that they're both more amenable to this body and more in line with the RCWs.
Anybody want to speak in opposition to postponement?
Let's get this nonsense over with. I know that they're trying to get rid of people like me just because I'm a member of the Republican Clark County, Republicans in Clark County. But they've already tried twice. They've run right-wingers against me with a lot of yard signs. I, without a yard sign, have been retained twice, 2-1. And I put out some signs. I put out some signs for the charter, and people in my precinct voted for the charter 2-1. I tell jokes about how we can now trust in God, but we can't trust the commissioners. And they still voted for me 2-1. I tell them how much I appreciate our congresswoman, and they vote for me 2-1. I asked them to vote for Mark Bolt, and they did, 2-1. Now, I know you're trying to get rid of people like me, but we'll see at the next election.
Somebody want to speak in favor of the motion? Peter?
Going in favor of this motion to delay is basically the same as voting it down, because even if we vote it down, there's nothing to say that they can't change the wording and bring it back the next time. I think Christian is just finding a way to say, we're not going to consider it. So the best move is just do it indefinitely. We're not saying it's going to be brought back at any time. Say whether voted up or down, it can be back at the next meeting regardless. So this is a really good step to kind of in the middle. Let's not consider it. You agreed not to consider it. I think we should take it up on that offer.
And you want to speak? If you're then come up here. Yes, ma'am.
After doing some careful consideration right now and considering what Christian has said, I believe we still need to vote on all of them right now. I think the community is well aware that these amendments are being debated today, and I think it would be very wise for the Republican Party to make a clear and unequivocal statement right now today that we do not believe that the sort of judgmental, thought police type of approach that is represented by all of these, they sort of weave together, and they're well constructed together. I believe we need to take an unequivocal step today, right now, to vote on these. Thank you.
Somebody want to speak in favor of the motion?
Can I have information, please?
Yes.
Is that me a question from you?
it means you're asking, you want to ask him a question.
Mr. Chairman, there's been a lot of theys here. Who is the they they're talking about? Who's the they are doing this, or they are, I thought Christian is the one that crafted it. I have not crafted this. Who's the they keep talking about?
I'm not sure I know the answer to that, but Vanessa, you want to speak in favor of the motion?
There's no right?
I just want to speak in favor of Christian's motion to postpone. Because, or was it postponing definitely is what you said? I think really, I'm just really appalled that the integrity of the chairman and of Christian and other people has been impugned publicly on Facebook and that kind of thing. We voted as a body for Kenny and for the leadership. And it seems to me that people who didn't get elected to that leadership or whatever are mad. And they're trying to impugn integrity. And we may not agree on all the issues. I'm one of the right-wingers, okay? I believe that this nation was founded on Christian principles, and that when you look at the platform of the National Republican Party, that the way I feel goes right down the line. And I think that in general, that the leadership of this party agrees with me. And I'm sorry that if our right-winger position is offensive, it doesn't mean that we don't have integrity or that we're trying to be some kind of underhanded thing. And so I just want to say that, think about that, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. I appreciate the kind words. Clyde, you want to speak in opposition to the motion?
I think when the member talked about the folks that are watching and looking at what we're considering today, as written, item 1 and item 5, which I believe that are the members put out, don't speak to what is appropriate and were the main subjects of the amount of illegality. And I think that we need to close the door on those and say, as those are considered, that's not what we're looking for. Clearly, Christian and others can bring other things back when they have been more carefully considered. But we represent the community, and the community needs to know is as those are written, they were not passed. So I think we should not postpone them, that we should deal with them now and take a vote and let everybody know where we stand, giving Christian the opportunity and anybody else. If they want to bring something back in the future, when it can be considered, when the information is fair and provided ahead of time, it can be considered then. But now I feel like we should close it.
Are we ready for closing? Nobody else wants to speak in favor?
I just want to make sure that people understand that I'm trying to be cooperative here right now with the remaining items on our agenda based on what the body has done thus far, okay? So the purpose of this motion to postpone is multi-purpose. First of all, if the motion to postpone fails, then what's going to happen is I'm going to introduce an amendment already prepared with 100 copies to modify Amendment 1 to get rid of the resignation language and make the language of sanctions exactly identical to the language that's in the state party bylaws. Now, if we want to go through and have that debate today, then I would suggest that you deny the motion to postpone. What I'm trying to do is be cooperative, take some of the more controversial things off of this and allow us time to work through it, and at the same time still be able to consider putting in a formal process by which we officially charter organizations. We have no process for that in our bylaws. We reference officially chartered organizations in our bylaws, but we don't have a process for that. So the point in separating this, postponing these two, was to leave the chartering issue on the table that we could decide today and take the time to go back and bring Amendment 1 into alignment with the objections stated by the state party.
All right, so this motion to postpone indefinitely just requires a majority vote. So I guess we'll do a standing vote. So all those in favor of the motion to postpone items 1 and 2, 1 and 5, please stand. Okay, be seated. All those opposed to the motion, please stand. You are a lousy bunch. I mean, a loud bunch. A loud bunch, if you can.
You know, you didn't have a voice vote for this one. You can't say that. You didn't have a voice vote.
Yeah, oh, that's right, we didn't have a voice vote. You can be seated. So the motion to postpone passes 43 to 27.